Make some noise for Jürgen Furian and Stephan Beyer. Make some noise, pioneers!
Hello! How are you doing?
Hey!
Hey there! How was the day so far? Thumbs up? You see. Fantastic. So, we are doing a quick intro to our next session here, and it's one of those sessions that is really, really important for us, but also it's important for us all here, because we are facing quite a big and tremendous challenge in the next couple of decades, and we want to talk about that. As you can see, the next session, the next panel will be about agriculture tech. There's a thing called growth of population, and we've seen a tremendous growth from the 60s to date in this 40 years. The question is, how did we secure food for our inhabitants on this planet during these days? There is one very important name to be mentioned called Norman Borlaug. He's dubbed the father of the Green Revolution, and he saved 1 billion people in Mexico especially, and in India and Pakistan. And he did it by developing high-yield, disease-resistant wheat. But in the next couple of years, we will see an explosion in growth of our inhabitants here in the growth, and it will be tremendous. 9 billion people by 2050. So, some people say if we go on in producing our food the way we do it now, we would need probably 2 planets to feed our people. So it's not working out, so we have to come up with new solutions. It's really, really urgent. And as you can see up here, I already mentioned the 9 billion people. 37% of the global workforce is employed in agriculture. So we are talking about a huge, huge market here. Agriculture accounts for 70% of the global water use. So normally when I talk to people, investors, startups, etc., when I talk about agriculture tech, if they are not in this field, for them it might be a little bit dusty or not so interesting. You want a growing market, here is your growing market, 9 billion people by 2050, okay? So there's a huge opportunity here for us entrepreneurs, of course, for investors, and a huge challenge to be taken. Stephan, do you want to go on?
Thanks, Jürgen. I think you made it pretty clear to us that agriculture presents one of the biggest and at the same time most important markets, and that's why our Pioneers Discover team had a closer look at it. And let me share some insights with you. So first of all, in order to cover the skyrocketing demand of food by 2050, we have to increase our global agriculture outputs by 70%. And to achieve this, we have to invest around $83 billion into developing countries. When it comes to society, there needs to be a major shift in the way of cultivation and usage of food. And when we look at the technologies, we have seen numerous application possibilities for the next time when it comes to automation, robotics, sensors, as well as analytics. But what's most important, when we have a closer look at the startups in this field, we are firmly convinced that startups and their products and solutions they develop have a huge impact on this area. And the fact that investments in agriculture were dribbling within the last 2 years emphasizes the strong trend. But let's take a look at a few of those startups. So when you look at the bottom right, you see a startup. It's called SkyCatch, and what they are doing, it's really cool. So they're combining 2 important things we've had for the future, which have an immense potential for the future way of building a business. It's drones and big data. And SkyCatch uses the small drones to capture the data, and which farmers can use to keep track of large geographic areas. And how does it work? So think of the benefits. Fully automated drones take off, go on a scheduled mission, capture the data, transmit the data, go back to the ground station, recharge themselves, take off again, and repeat the whole procedure. And another interesting topic on the top left you see here is precision, also agriculture, precision farming, and analytics. And this startup here, it's called Agrivi, and what they are doing, they're providing a cloud farm management software which the farmer can use to get insights and on his crop production. And by this, he's empowered to make data-driven decisions by bringing him the knowledge of smart pest alarms, as well as analytics and best practices. But what we at Discover most excited about is the future way of cultivation of food. And for example, here on the top right, we see here Niva. This is a startup where the user can grow his own food at home and control this device with his smartphone. And we have to be aware of that the current livestock producing process is not and won't be sustainable in the future. So we have to think about solutions in this field. And as urbanization is the future way of living, we have to produce products they have to produce near to the customer, and this has to happen in city centers. And solutions like this have a huge impact on that. And on the bottom left, you see here a startup. It's called Modern Meadow, and what they are doing, they're developing meat products by using 3D printing technology. And that's also something which has a huge impact on that. And 3D printing technologies, as well as in vitro meat, vertical farming, and in-house farming, those are technologies developed by startups where we can see they have an important role on this business side. And I, for my part, I can't wait to print my own cheeseburger at home, and all I have to do is to go to the microwave, heat it up, and enjoy it. That's right, so the machine is doing all that work. And how does it work? When we have a closer look at this in vitro meat, they are doing that by using this 3D printing technology and deposit the clumps of cells into patterns of tissues. And that's really interesting. So to sum it up, we see there are a lot of startups already out there which have a huge impact on this business and an important role to overcome this food industry shift. And what we are doing at Discover, we are trying to help startups to collaborate with huge corporations on the other side around, because we see that together they can reach the next level when it comes to innovation power. And if you are more interested in startups or in Pioneers Discover, then approach us. Our Discover team is here at the festival, and we are really looking forward to talking to you guys. And thanks a lot. But before you go, stay here and take a deep dive into AgTech.
All right. So here's a shout out to all investors, to all entrepreneurs. Take a look at this field. Huge opportunities for all of us, and challenges that we have to address. There is no way around it. So that's the message. And now, let me introduce to you the pros in this field. The next panel will be moderated by Whitney from Bloomberg. Nitza from Trendlines AgTech will be on the panel from Israel. Adam Anders from Anterra Capital. And of course, Shalom from Analyst AgTech. Welcome on stage.
Okay, well, that was a great introduction. Thank you very much to Jürgen and to Stephan. My name's Whitney. As he mentioned, I'm with Bloomberg News, based in London, and I write about agriculture, the markets, the issues, trade. And I'm interested in hearing a lot more about the technology side, and we've got a great group of panelists here to talk about that. Just on my right, we have Adam Anders, and he is a managing partner at Anterra Capital in Amsterdam. They're a growth capital fund focusing on later stage investments in various parts, all parts of the food supply chain. That's right. Next to him, we have Nitza Kardish, and she is the CEO of Trendlines AgTech. They're based in Israel, and they do a little more focused toward early stage investment. And then next to her, we have Shalom, not some. Thank you very much for being here. He's the CEO of Analyst AgTech, which is a company that's also based in Israel that Nitza is actually invested in. And he can maybe give us some examples about how to get into this industry and really sort of drill down and talk about some of the interesting things he's doing involving the water supply and how to keep that clean from pesticides. So to start, I just want to talk to Adam for a minute. I'm hoping that you can give me sort of a big picture of what's going on in AgTech, and particularly focusing on some of the things that Jürgen and Stephan were telling us about. Why is this important, and why should people be looking at this space?
Sure, with pleasure, Whitney. So just to frame the issue, I think Jürgen put up a slide on population growth. I would describe that as definitely less than a third, maybe an eighth of the bigger picture issue. So there are three big drivers on the demand side. Population growth is about a third of it. Another critical issue in the food and agriculture value chain is the emerging middle class in Asia. And I think that's best illustrated with the fact that for everyone who enters the middle class and wants to move to a grain-based diet, to say a processed food or a meat-based diet, a kilo of beef takes 8 kilos of feed. So that creates an equal amount of pressure on our food value chain as all the population growth we're expecting in the rest of the world when looked at a broad concept. The next big driver on the demand side is the bioeconomy. And people think of biofuels, which is one thing that's competing for land space, but also there's a lot of emphasis on having biologically produced plastics for our bottles. All of those things are competing for that same resource. If we flip to the supply side, there is more land, but the very best land is where we chose to put our original homes, next to rivers, fertile, productive. Urbanization is taking that out of the mix. And on the contrary, we're going to land that's less valuable, less productive, and requires a lot of capex to get there. Then layer on perhaps climate change, then layer on what's happening with the industrialization of agriculture, creating now some issues with the environment, with resistance to certain pesticides, and you've got a supply constraints and a big increase in demand coming, and that for us is something that has to be solved, in our opinion, through innovation.
Right. Okay, well, Nitza, maybe you can sort of take it from there. So Adam has told us a lot about some of the problems that are out there and the big issues that we're facing. Can you talk to me a little bit about what your company's doing, some things that you're excited about, and maybe some projects that, that you're looking at? Because one of your missions is to sort of have a positive impact, a positive human impact, right? I think this is what you told me. So please tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
So first, I'm very excited to be here,
yeah.
And I want to thank the organizer for such a fantastic event. I can tell you that coming from a scientific and business-oriented field, there is nothing like that. It is a really festival and not a conference. I mean, you are celebrating innovation and enthusiasm, which is basic and very important for entrepreneurs. For your question regarding what we are seeing for the last year and what we are investing in, is there is a clear trend of technology dealing with precision agriculture, big data, and the application. And this audience, of course, it is very relevant for you because there are a lot of technologies that can convert from the high tech and implemented in the AgTech. I can say that it is driven mostly by the big player, by the big companies, because they are not considered anymore as a seed, fertilized chemical supplier, but they are looking for holistic solutions for the farmer. And what they are looking for is something that will be much more efficient, that will increase their yield, and using all this knowledge and technology from the IT is something that it is already, but it will be crucial. Other thing that we see is technology that reduce the dependence in labor. And one particular company that we have in this area is Futurograph, that they are developing an automation for grafting. Grafting is a methodology to face problem in a very harsh soil, and robotic and automation in grafting has the potential to shift all the industry in that side. And of course, we see functional food. This is something that it's a supplement and it's important, and more sustainable technology to be able to produce more with less environmental damage.
Okay. That sounds great. Well, Shalom, you were telling me that you are sort of new to this space. You're involved in agriculture, but you haven't always been. And I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about that, what it's like to enter the field of agriculture technology, and what sort of challenges are out there, what sort of opportunities are out there. What's it been like for you as more of a newcomer?
Yeah, I consider myself as a veteran entrepreneur, but most of the year I was involved in the high-tech technology. I dealt with high-end avionics and electro-optical system for jet fighters and 3D real-time graphics for the media and the broadcast. And to tell you the truth, it was very interesting, but I didn't really like the end result of what I'm dealing with. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I met this technology in Weizmann Institute of Science, and I became to be aware of the necessities in the AgTech, and I was fascinated, and I decided to leave everything aside and to do only that. And of course, the challenges are amazing. I mean, unlike most of the stuff that we even see today, or most of the stuff that I dealt in the past, and most of the high technologies and innovations, which are fantastic, for sure, they are fantastic and they make our lives much, much better, but some of them, or many of them, are kind of nice to have. But when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to environment, when it comes to clean water, it's not a nice to have anymore. It's surviving. So it actually changed my perspective and my point of view, and I decided to be committed to ag technology. And this is what I'm doing right now, thanks to Nitza Incubator being supported and funded by them. So I'm running this startup company that deals with agriculture and environment at the same time.
Okay, well, great. Well, I mean, I think there are maybe a lot of different ways into this, and a lot of different avenues that you can take. But we were talking, Adam, a little bit about sort of the amount of funding that's available in for agricultural technology, and how actually it's been a space that's been underfunded in a way. And so, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Look, certainly, I can tell you about it with a degree of frustration, but I think it also creates the opportunity. So if you were to compare the amount of funding on an innovation side or a research and development that agriculture gets compared to healthcare, ICT, it's a fraction. On the government side in Europe, it's less than 30% of healthcare, less than 50% of ICT. If you then look at how much venture capital money is going in, it's a dribble. And if you combine those two as a ratio, actually agriculture is around about 70% behind in terms of research and development and fundamental venture capital support. If we accept the fact that there's a big issue, that creates an opportunity for entrepreneurs and hopefully also for investors. And we see that trend picking up, but it's still early days. So we've seen Khosla has several ag tech investments. Index has several and has had a very impressive exit recently. We've seen Kleiner Perkins with 2 dedicated people. But that's a couple of investments a year maximum, maybe 1 every 2 years actually. And we think it's time to step up that challenge and actually have dedicated funds.
Right, but how do you sort of get into that? How do you sort of...
Well, I mean, how we got into it, why we got into it? We got into it, well, the reason why we think other people aren't into it is probably a better beginning.
Sure.
People look at agriculture, they see global markets, which is true. If you've got a new agricultural innovation, you probably have to do a northern hemisphere summer and a southern hemisphere summer. They see the complexity, which is partly compounded by cyclicality, by weather, by disease. And they see an area that hasn't seen much entrepreneurial innovation from a comparable with tech, the experienced entrepreneurs, the high activity, the perhaps closed markets. We looked at that and said, how do we crack that? We looked at getting the backing of one of the largest food and agriculture, the largest food and agriculture bank in the world, Rabobank. And we said, look, these guys are 20th largest bank in the world, 90 full-time food and agricultural analysts. We think if we layer their knowledge onto those issues, we can help other VCs that are tampering around the edge or entrepreneurs to crack into strong customer relationships, big markets, operating in multiple geographies, and unravel a bit of that complexity. And there's strategies to get around that. For example, if it's a variety issue or a disease issue, operate in 2 different climates. Provide a service that facilitates trade, so you're not exposed to that commodity risk.
Right. Okay, well that's great. I think there are probably a lot of different avenues and ways in. I mean, Nitza and Shalom, you were both telling me a lot about what's going on in Israel and sort of the funding atmosphere that there is there. And I don't know if we could talk about that for a little bit, because I think that there are a lot of interesting things going on there. And also there's a long history of investing in agriculture that a lot of other places don't have. So, I mean, why is that? What's going on in Israel?
Israel has at least 2 characteristics that position it in the front of agriculture solutions. First is the necessity. We have a very harsh environmental condition for agriculture. More than 50% of our land is desert. We are very limited in fresh water. So, as you know, necessity is the mother of innovation. We had to do something to solve these problems. So, a lot of focus and resources went to agriculture research and development. And of course, it's surprising to know that in Israel there are more than 200 research groups focused only in agriculture. So this is one side of the picture. The other one is the entrepreneurial culture that is so strong and so fundamental in Israel, the level of the entrepreneur and the willing to take risk and not afraid from failure. You know, when you are an entrepreneur, this is in general, don't be afraid to fail. Failure, it doesn't mean that you are a failure. It means that you have to try again and again and again. So we have this condition. And the third thing that it's most important is the governmental support. The government of Israel decided that food security is a national mission. So they are doing a lot and more for commercialization, knowledge from the academia, approaching new market, and we have support for the government, and that's create an ecosystem that enable us to take a risk and to go for an unknown, almost new area like entrepreneurship in agriculture. And all these reasons position our knowledge and company in front of the technology area.
Okay. Well, yeah, and Shalom too. I mean, you're also from Israel, and we were talking about this a little bit as well. I mean, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that, but I thought it was interesting what you were telling me earlier, that a lot of these problems that we're talking about that the world is going to face in the future, Israel's already had to deal with, right, in terms of the weather and the climate issues and the lack of resources. So I don't know if you could tell us a little bit more about that, and then also Nitza was mentioning the government support for investing in this type of technology. So.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Many of the challenges and the answers that we are looking for today globally, we faced about 60 or 100 years ago. And many people are not aware how small Israel is and how little the resources are. Sometimes I ask non-Israeli people a kind of a stupid question: how wide is the Jordan River, which is the biggest river in Israel? And I get some answers like, I don't know, maybe a mile, maybe like the Hudson River or whatever. But if we are lucky and it's a rainy winter, the Jordan River is about 10 meters wide. And so Israel is really, really small, and the resources are very limited, no water almost. And you know, if you go back like 100 years ago, most of the land was swamp or sand dunes or arid and deserted area. So it was a necessity, as Nitza mentioned, and it was a question of survival. So many of these technologies, a lot of thinking out of the box, and being forced to come with solution started about 50 or 60 years ago. And for example, talking about water, recycling and utilizing recycling sewage water in Israel, 70% of sewage water is being recycled for agriculture. If I'm not mistaken, the second one on the list is Spain with 20%. Yeah. So it's a huge, huge difference. And again, not only that, due to the political situation in Israel, Israel is considered to be a kind of an island because most of the products, especially fresh product, we cannot sell to our neighboring countries. So we have to ship it and to export it to Europe, to Russia, to the US or Japan. So we have to develop all kind of method to store, to pack it right, to ship it the right way. So all those constraints build up this technology, and we are very proud of it, of course.
Right. Well, it sounds like, yeah, there are a lot of challenges there, and you've really had to adapt, and so maybe there's something that the rest of us can learn as we unfortunately face these bigger problems in the future. Adam, can you tell us a little bit about the investment climate in Europe then, as opposed to Israel? I mean, what are the differences? Are there benefits or ways to get in?
First of all, we see the lift in interest from general VCs. There's always been a strong interest from the big ag companies, Beyer, Monsanto, BASF, Syngenta, John Deere. But I think the big opportunity is for entrepreneurs now to step into that space. And if we were to take precision agriculture, which I think is relevant to this crowd, when a farmer begins the year, they have a certain quality soil and they have to select the seed. The selection is done on very limited data, and so immediately there's a chance to step in and help that selection. How to manage the soil is also, in fact, all the decisions the farmer makes are based upon often hand-me-downs, advice from agronomists, gut feeling, learning in the field. It's time to gather that data, put it together, and improve that ultimate yield and make that farmer's life easier. To frame the problem, we've spent billions of dollars and a lot of time on genetics and genetics improvement, and we'll keep on doing that. But the actual plant-soil combination that's ultimately chosen, we only achieve 60 to 70% of that potential. The time has come to invest on the rest of what the farmer's doing to actually improve yield there, as opposed to, or as well as, the rest of the biological piece. And to do that, we've got precision spraying. As you're going through the field, don't spray over the same space that you've already sprayed, or be more precise around the square 10 meters. How much does this particular piece need? For that, you need sensors about how the plants are going. You need data to make a decision for you, and a decision tool to make a decision for you. And the more sophisticated that decision or analysis can be, the easier the farmer's life, and the more chance we'll get to reaching the full potential yield of that soil-seed combination. That's one example. I'll let you move on. I'll give you some more.
I think that's great, but one thing I'm wondering about, though, is sort of the policy environment in Europe as well, and if that's helpful. You were saying that in the UK there's some support for agricultural technology, but then when I think about European policy, I mean, genetically modified crops are a big contentious issue in Europe, and so I'm wondering if that sort of colors the sort of whole debate on agritech at all.
Well, look, if you want to introduce a new GMO crop in Europe, you're going to have a huge regulatory battle, and if you want to do it elsewhere in the world, you need 12 years, 14 years, and $200 million, right? So that's a difficult early-stage venture capital bet. Right. But if you're interested in a biological chemical or a new process innovation for a farmer, there's a lot of backing and attention right now. The UK government's just launched the UK TI initiative, several £100 million to improve agricultural innovation. There's similar initiatives at the European level that are just ramping up. But I still look at the opportunity in terms of the big issue and think there's a bigger space for entrepreneurs to actually fill that gap before the government eventually gets there, or quite frankly, before Beyer, Syngenta, BASF actually fill it for us and also charge us a little bit extra.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, that's great. There are a lot of players in the market. I wanted to actually talk a little bit as well about some individual technologies, and maybe Shalom, we can start with you, since your company is doing something very specific. So we have two investors, and then Shalom is actually working on a technology involving water supply and eliminating contamination from pesticides. And tell me a little bit about how that works and sort of the process for getting something like that funded.
Yeah, gladly. From the technology point of view, what we are trying to do is to solve the conflict between the ongoing, even growing necessity for more pesticide in order to get more food and more crops, and there is no way to bypass it. We are talking about ag technologies, and each and every contribution is significant, but still the most significant and factor one to guarantee a crop yield is pesticides. And no wonder that the market is about $50 to $60 billion and growing about 5% per year, because without pesticide, more than 50% of crops would be lost. So pesticides are great, and they do the job. However, there is a kind of a dark side to the equation. And these great pesticides are so great, they are very stable and very persistent. So Mother Nature doesn't really know how to decompose them and how to handle it. So eventually they find their ways to our precious groundwater. So the regulator kind of limit pesticide utilization, either by banning some type of pesticide or by limiting the quantities or concentrations or frequent. So if you want more food, you need more pesticides. If you want to keep the water clean, you need less pesticides. So how do you overcome this conflict? And this is what we try to do. The technology that Catalyst AgTech was developed, as I mentioned, at Weizmann Institute of Science. And what we do, we add a tailored and suitable catalyst to a pesticide in such a way that it creates a self-destruct mechanism that decomposes the problematic molecule, but only after the essential job is done. Meaning this catalyst doesn't affect at all the effective job of the pesticide, but when the pesticide, and in our case the pesticides plus the catalyst, start to migrate further down toward the groundwater, only then a chemical reaction is triggered and the problematic molecule is broken into harmless metabolites that Mother Nature can easily and safely take care of. So by this way, we're able to use more pesticides on one hand and to prevent or significantly reduce contamination of groundwater.
Okay.
And so far we are funded thanks to the incubator and Trendlines plus Israeli governmental fund. But this is just the beginning, and of course we are looking for more fund to go on. And if talking about the financial market, it is not easy, and I do believe that it is underfunded. But I'm quite sure it will change. On one hand, I don't really understand why. I mean, the potential is so big, and it seems to be very profitable and rewarding. So why not everybody is jumping on it immediately? On the other hand, it's a little bit a kind of a different ball game, because time to market is relatively long. It's not only depend on what we are doing, because after we complete our development with a specific product, it goes through regulation, and regulation may take time, and regulation is different in the US and in Europe, in Latin America, and so on. So many of the classical or traditional VCs are a little bit reluctant for dealing with such long-term investment, but I'm quite sure that it will come, and we shall have the needed fund in order to make it happen.
I just want to add something about the fact that we can, we can invest in such an early stage in very high-risk technology is due to the fact that we are really leverage our private investment with complementary fund from the government in a very nice proportion, and this is a very important driving force. And the other thing is that we are really working very close, hands-on with our portfolio companies at the beginning to enable them to reach their milestone that will enable them to raise the second round. And that's why we are a big staff, big team that's supporting the portfolio to get to their very essential milestone to go for the next round. And it is a challenging. We need much more success story. We need to show that this area is not such a, a vision for the future, is really happening now. And going for unmet need is critical.
Right.
And this is definitely a need that has to be addressed, and very soon.
But Nitza, I think there are success stories. I think it's a sector that's not good about publishing its success. I mean, we've had the $1 billion exit with Climate Corporation from Index and several other investors earlier this year. We had a $500 million exit of AgriQuest. We've had a $400 million exit of Athenix. These are all in the last 2 years. There's also about 15 precision farming exits. There's a long list of activity, and if you take on a early stage long-term challenge, you might face regulatory hurdles, but if you're stepping into biologicals, or if you're stepping into a technology solution for a farmer, you don't need to wait a long time. I think Climate Corporation was seeded some 5 or 6 years ago in Switzerland, sold then out of California, $900 million, Monsanto. It's going to bring a lot of attention, and it's those type of successes that will bring more entrepreneurs and more investors in.
Agree.
So,
agree. And it's I think that the resonance on each other, it has to be a conversation between the sides regarding that.
Well, I guess a question then for both of you is, when you're looking at potential investments, when you're looking at a startup, what's something that really catches your attention right now? Is there something that you're looking for in particular to invest in? What are your thoughts there?
So if I think of big themes that really excite me, first of all is that moment from when the farmer has got his soil and seed dedicated, it's bridging that 30–40% real potential is not there. The second thing is, once it leaves the farm, 40% of the food we produce is not consumed. If you're talking in the developed market, most of that is wasted at our retail end, and it's also wasted at our home. If you're talking in developing markets, it's harvesters dropping seed back onto the field or very poor storage. Now, we're not in the business of investing in that infrastructure. You hit capital intensive and cyclicality doing that. But there's a world of innovations, either temperature monitoring, new sensors, analysis of data to enable decisions for either small-scale farmers in Africa or people in the logistics value chain that are going to help bridge that gap. And something that's transformational for me would be a new type of sensor, a new decision tool, or a new preservation technology. We've invested in 2 preservation technologies.
Okay. And Nitza, what about you? Is there something that you're looking for right now, or what are you really interested in at the moment?
Adam described well what what we are looking. I can just add that maybe it's a little bit a personal perspective, but I do think that technology in West food is something really critical and crucial, because everybody speaks about the fact that we have to produce more and more food, 40%, and actually when you look at the facts, 40% of our produced food from the post-harvesting in the field until Mrs. Brown dinner table is wasted. And it's not only the food that goes, it's all the input that we put there: fertilized, water, energy, labor, so
packaging.
So everything that will reduce and will control the waste is something I think that is very important.
Right.
And of course, we look at the precision, at the big data, which is an opportunity to bring a solution for the farmer. Everything that addresses a need, and it's more holistic solution for the farmer.
Okay, well, that's something interesting as well, I think, in terms of what it's going to be like to be a farmer in the future. and the farmer's adaptation of a lot of this technology, because there are a lot of innovations that are coming out and ideas that people have, you know, in terms of precision agriculture and very complex, complicated things. We also, at the same time, have an aging farm population. Fewer and fewer people are working in farming nowadays. So how do you sort of bridge that gap?
Well, I think that's one of the breakthroughs that's happening, because while there's an aging population, farms are getting larger, and also the new generation of farmer that is younger has got a 75% propensity to actually use precision agriculture and data as opposed to their first generation that's still at the helm. With that, you have somebody who's got an enormous amount of information, weather, many years of yield, what type of seed they'd selected, but they're not using it for anything and they want some help. And we see that the low-hanging fruit, which has good returns, like GPS guidance, guiding your tractor through the field so you don't spray over the same spot at the same time, or sorry, a second time, saves 10% of inputs. These are very, very simple innovations. If we layer a decision tool over that, we think there's the propensity of the next generation of farmer to take it on. And then there's a step change happening in the developing emerging markets. So they've got their often access to some form of telephone, smartphone. And so there's information that can come straight from the developed world about different methods, different demands, application of fertilizers, and that funding is coming from our big retailers, our big buyers. So there's a link up that technology can make to help the small-scale farmer in the emerging markets, and the large-scale farmer, they're ready, and their on-farm infrastructure is, I think, just coming through, tipping over the 60, 70% penetration. It's time for some algorithms, some decision tools, and some innovation.
Okay. Do either of you have anything to add in terms of what the farmer is going to look like in the future, or what you think is?
Yeah. Actually, my question might be biased because of my age, but I do believe that the veteran and experienced farmer are the better one, and they can accept easily new technologies. Actually, as you mentioned, I mean, most of the new tools today are actually enabling the experienced farmer to keep going due to the fact that it's not anymore a muscle sweating in the sun type of job, but you are in a kind of an air-conditioned, computerized, push-button, GPS type of machines. And again, I'm among other things, I'm an ex-military pilot, and maybe if you are in a tight air combat, being young and doing crazy maneuvering might be an advantage, but in most other missions, and especially if you go to commercial aviation, the more experience you have, the better you are. And I'm sure that it is true in agriculture as well. Most of the farmers I know, at least in Israel, they are actually very handy people. They are looking for innovation. Actually, each and every day they are facing all kinds of problems and challenges and malfunctions and unexpected, and they have to think out of the box. They have to improvise. They have to come with solutions, and they are starving for new technologies. And especially in Israel, there is a lot of events which are training and education and a lot of fairs and events and so on. So I'm quite sure that the young generation, of course, are joining and will join the agriculture arena because it's interesting, because it's challenging, because it's rewarding, but not necessarily because advanced technology drives it.
Right, Nitza.
I think that you're biased not because of your age, but because you came from Israel. And I'm not sure, but I believe that not all the farmers all over the world are so excited about new technology. And I think there is an issue, and an important one, because farmer has extensive experience. And I'm afraid that without doing something about that, this knowledge, know-how, protocols will diminish. So I believe that this is the opportunity to develop systems that can embed, this knowledge, know-how. And in this system, there are three parameters. The brain has to be very sophisticated and very strong system, but the interface has to be very simple. And that will encourage a lot of users to go and use this technology. And here we have the opportunity. not to lose whatever learned for many years, because agriculture is tradition. And this is our responsibility, to keep it and and young generation, being a farmer is very harsh work, but technology can make it much easier.
Right.
So this is the opportunity.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that on one hand, you do have a lot of farmers who are very tech savvy already, but then it's just sort of bridging the gap and getting everyone to sort of on board with it, sort of outside of Israel and other parts of the world, and then, bringing the young people in as well and sort of adapting the new things. Another thing that Adam and I were talking a little bit about earlier involving startup technology and new technology is sort of the competition that's out there from the big companies, and they seem to be the ones that are really investing in this space. And how do you sort of make room in a space that's crowded with really big players?
In my opinion, that door is more than wide open.
Okay.
So you have a situation where when a farmer makes the decision to choose to plant a patented seed, they get higher yield, but very quickly they end up faced with value-based pricing. The price of that seed goes up, so the farmer's always on the verge of deciding to buy that seed, but they don't get the full benefit of that increased yield.
Right.
Now, if we go to farming as a system, and we allow that decision tool, or that precision farming tool, to be owned by that same vendor, then the entire maximum yield of the farm is going to get priced away. It may not be the smartest thing for the farmer to do, to allow the input providers to be the owner of their data and their yield monitoring.
So you're talking about for instance, the Monsanto purchase recently. All this data that's coming off the farm, the company has access to, right?
Correct.
So
and so if I was a farmer, I wouldn't be looking for those input providers to provide those solutions. I'd be looking for an entrepreneur, an independent company, and then I'd like that to be backed hopefully by Anterra Capital. And I think that's the type of interface that's going to be necessary. The other reason why the interface is very important is that as we learn more about every single field, we presently make our decisions on what to grow based upon test fields around the world, a very expensive process, field testing. But with data, we can turn every field into, in effect, a sample field for improving our agricultural processes. We want that to be something that can be shared so that all farmers can benefit from that upside, and that more producers of either agricultural inputs or new ideas can plug in. It's a reason why this sector should have a dose of independence, in my opinion.
Well, maybe this is something we should have talked about in the beginning, but I mean, when we say precision agriculture, I mean, I'm not sure exactly how familiar. I think a lot of people probably know what that is, but just the sort of definition, precision agriculture, it's really drilling down to small sizes in the field and tailoring what you do to.
So precision agriculture is about using the information that's available to make better decisions on the farm. Another common expression is to view the farm as a yield as a system. So if you view yield as something you're going to achieve in an industrial context, you put more inputs on, you get higher yield. If you look at all the actions you can take and you use data to decide, that's a precision data solution.
Okay.
And that can vary from a simple thing that guides your tractor or decides how much fertilizer to put on, to a yield forecast, a weather forecast, an alert when frost is coming, an alert when a disease is coming.
Right. So we're looking at mass amounts of data, basically, potentially coming off of every farm.
Correct, and we're also looking at a lot of data. There's a lot of data that's collected that's not used.
Yep.
Then there's a lot of data that's not yet collected. And so there's soil sampling that can, from a cost perspective, you only make a couple of times a year, or sometimes even once every 3 years.
Right.
Lower cost solution, or a simpler, lower cost, perhaps lower information, real-time answer, will change a farmer from managing entire, farming decisions made at the region level to the acre level. And of course, the ultimate is there's 50,000 plants in a hectare of corn. Eventually maybe we get down to managing the molecules by the plant, but that's that's going to take a while, I think.
Okay, well, one other thing. I mean, we've talked a lot about crop farming, and that's one piece of agriculture. But there's also this, rising demand for meat, and there are a lot of different and interesting things to do in that space as well, making livestock more efficient. And Nitza, I mean, one of the things I think you mentioned to me on the phone, you're doing some things in robotics and dairy farms. And I don't know if we could talk about that a little bit, but you know, so it's not, when you talk about agriculture technology, we're not just talking about, you know, things tailored to the American farmer and the corn and you know, wheat crops, but also, you know, livestock or aquaculture or other different ways, right?
Are you aiming to the meat industry? Or
yeah, well, I'm just wondering.
So personally, I'm a vegan, so I contribute
maybe I shouldn't
my
have
part
that
to this problem.
But you are doing some robotics for milking machines, right?
Yeah,
that's what you're investing
we
in.
have two companies that has a robotic solutions. One is for growing chicken, which make the conversion ratio much more efficient. You can feed the chicken in a very precise way and collect the data, and that's how you make it much more efficient. The other robotic is a robotic arm for much friendly and efficient way to milk the cows. So as I said before, a solution that will provide efficient solution and reduce the labor intensive. This is something that, and the last thing in this industry, people has to move to aquaculture. Fish is much more healthy and efficient, and at last is the insect industry, which it is a goal for feed and food as well. Again, as a vegetarian, I don't care, but insects is a solution for future to come, for sure.
That's really interesting. Shalom, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in this matter, but my son is a PhD in hydrology, and he is a scientist and researcher in Israel. And a couple of years ago, he joined Nitza. He became to be a vegetarian. And it has nothing to do with what we feel, at least in his case, to animals or health issues, but purely scientifically, he kind of came to the conclusion that we will not have enough resources, especially water and farmland, in order to keep consuming meat the way we do it today. And he showed me all kind of graphs and charts and numbers and so on that I hardly understood, but it sounds very convincing, I must say. And he decided not to eat meat anymore as kind of, I don't know, starting the trend. So asking, the answer is very tangible and very easy, and it's in our hands. However, the global trend is totally different, because there is so again, I'm not an expert, but my kind of intuitive or gut feeling is that it's unavoidable. I do believe that by the end of the day, eventually we would have to give up meat and to adopt more and more vegetarian habits.
Right.
Adam won't
but
like
time will tell.
Okay, well, it looks like we might actually be out of time.
Not quite,
not
actually.
Quite.
What has happened is more you've stirred up the audience, and there's a bunch of questions come up by sliders, so maybe you'd be kind enough to answer a few, and I'll highlight one or two, and whoever feels obliged will just answer, and we'll just do, let's say, 3, 4, 5 minutes of Q&A, if that's okay. And the first question would be, although we optimize the technology of producing food, we'll need huge amounts of fertilizers. That's a fundamental problem, as we will run out of primary phosphorus in around 100 years. What do you think?
Thoughts on fertilizer?
Shalom?
Unfortunately, I don't have a good answers because A, I'm not expert on that, and I am afraid that there is no good answer right now on the table. So yes, it is an issue, but I don't have an answer to answer.
Oh dear. That's...
Adam, do you have a...
First of all, we've got to be careful. First of all, we massively overuse our fertilizer anyway. So the best thing to do is to actually use precision farming. It's one of the most expensive inputs. And a simple innovation like a sensor on the end of the fertilizer applier that's sensing how healthy the plants are, what they need, is going to save what you apply. Better soil management will save what you apply. And if we have to, we're going to have to look at different ways of recycling. It is a challenge, but there's an opportunity there for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, anyone else feel obliged to add something? Nope, happy with it? That's good. The next question is, how do you impact the corruption on the progress of the industry? For example, Monsanto pushing unhealthy GMO foods through the WTO and government lobbyism. Does this make it hard to compete?
Look, you're in a situation where, I mean, it's one of the trends we haven't spoken about.
Right.
The concept of moving away from just calories to nutritional value in our food, the trends between wellness, the trends between people wanting to know where their food came from. So that transparency creates an enormous opportunity for us to understand what went in, how it was farmed. It also allows you to have better premium foods. I think that many people are ready to know more about where their food came from. So I'd look at the opportunity to actually back this up by creating classes of food that don't have attributes that people don't want and communicate to people about what that is. Information for consumers, a technology solution, track and trace. And let's create more premium niche food products. Parma ham, high-end olive oils. Let's solve the, well, that's obviously not an emerging market way of solving it, but that's another opportunity in the developed market.
That's good. Please.
I do believe that water, fresh water, is the most critical.
Quick for me. Okay.
Most critical factor in food security and creating food, because land is not limited. The problem is to bring the water to the plant, and we have to go for technology that will be much more precise, like really drip irrigation. We have to reuse our water, and it will have a significant impact on society if we want to solve this problem, because water is equal to food or hunger. So it is very important.
So will it become the new oil?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're already seeing, I think you can see in countries that undervalue their food and have land, we're already seeing forward contracts, particularly out of some of the more aggressive forward contracting countries, where they're buying what they appear to be buying, say, soybean, but they're really buying people's inefficient pricing of water. There is going to be a turnaround around that. You also see strategic buying of land upstream. I think water is going to be a critical part of the next equation, whether that's recycling, better managing. It's going to be a part of the equation, certainly.
Thank you. And then we've got around 2 minutes, so we'll do 2 or 3 more questions. And it says some statistics claim that in Western countries, around 1% of people produce 99% of the food. Do you expect the trend towards micro-farming investments and yield production for small, local or community crop? One of our audience wants to know.
I see it in 2 halves. I think you're going to have the large-scale farmers that are going to adapt certain innovations, but clearly in emerging markets, and clearly there's going to be a niche as technology allows smaller scale farmers to benefit from the knowledge of either extremely expensive decision or equipment that's available to large scale. I think you're going to see an evening out. For emerging markets, it's going to be a small scale farming solution. That bit we have to accept, or that bit is a good thing, and it's certain, in my opinion.
Thank you. The audience, if you're not happy with the answer, you can write another question, but you have to hurry up. It's only 1:20. Next question is, do you consider forestry part of AgTech, and is forestry an area where you are also seeing innovations? Is there innovation in forestry?
So intuitively, I do believe yes, but the nearest forest to Israel is where? Very far away.
But you can look at it globally. Certainly, yes. Forestry is agriculture as well. And yesterday, during dinner time, we had a very interesting conversation regarding that with the keynote speaker that was yesterday. And it has huge potential to solve the warm problem in Earth, and it is very important, and we have to put a lot of effort and to grow forestry all over the world.
Thank you.
And in developing countries as well.
Thank you. Now maybe this last question. European vegetables are offered in African countries for cheaper prices than local produced products. Is that true or not?
Well, what is true is that because of the local production costs and our inability to get the top-end innovations into parts of Africa, you can have a situation easily where corn prices are higher in Africa than they are in the US. I'm not sure personally whether there's vegetables being shipped there, because that's a very expensive solution. You have a shelf life issue. But it is a major problem, and it overlaps. I'm now cheating a bit and going ahead to the next question. It's not about there being enough food. I agree with that point. There is enough calories out there. It's got to be in the right place, at the right time, and affordable. And we're failing dismally on that, and statistically we're going to continue to fail because the available arable land or the yield gap, as in the places where we could be more efficient, they're in a different physical place from where the population growth and where the emerging middle class that's consuming more processed or meats have the increase in demand. So there will be trade. We need better shelf life, better logistics and innovations around that, because that's a statistical certainty. There will unfortunately or fortunately be trade.
So there's a lot of challenges out there, a lot of opportunity, but a lot of issues to be solved, if I can maybe sum it up. Would you like to add anything?
No, I think we've had a great discussion. I'm excited to, I've been excited to hear what everyone had to say. I've food for thought, definitely. So thank you very much, all of you, for your responses, and thank you, pioneers.